Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm doing a 25.13 jungle tier list. So if your content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. There were a couple of follow-up changes in this patch for the second MSI patch. They wanted to kind of even things out or readjust some things which they kind of overswung on. There was also a hotfix in this patch to Briar. They did some adjustments to her kit to kind of make her feel just better, like quality of life changes, but they ended up being quite power positive. So they ended up putting some power out of her kit. I believe it was 0.580 growth, and 2 stacks of her bleed have just been taken out, so definitely some power loss there, specifically towards lower MMR brackets where those changes are going to matter a bit more. Let's get into it. So the D tier is going to consist of the same 5 champions. We lead off with Silas, who just hasn't been in a good spot in the jungle for a while now. He is too dependent on getting early kills, snowballing those advantages, and then using that to kind of actively clear as quick as like other junglers. If you start from like even playing field, you're starting from a behind playing field, you're just not that good at being a jungler at the moment, and your snowballing potential has been crippled by the fact that they pushed damage out of his champion's kit, gave him like a health ratio on the W, and kind of pushed him more towards playing as a bruiser-esque champion, which, yeah, is just not that great for jungle Silas at the moment. In the case of Maokai, he's incredibly competitively bound in his current state. He is very unpopular for solo queue, so unpopular that I actually didn't remember to add him here. So, this champion, I just wouldn't recommend playing him in his current state. You just don't have enough agency over the game. There is an argument that, like, if you're very confident and you're, like, paired with a duo for the most part, but there are spots where maybe you can get away with picking him, but he's just a champion I wouldn't really even consider on your radar at the moment, as there are just better tank options which have, like, utility within their kit, and also have a bit more agency. Skarner isn't actually a D-tier champion. He kind of isn't at the same time. I think there are people who have realized that there is some level of build optimization to be done, and that you can get a bit more agency through his build, going items like going items like Overlord's Bloodmail and Sterix has definitely given him a bit more power. That being said, though, the champion's very linear in what he can provide. He's actually also quite elite skewed in terms of his kit. You need to actually have a decent amount of mastery on this champion to really get the most out of him, and he's just been heavily nerfed for competitive. That's like the other issue with the champion. I think if you're looking for a tank with a bit more agency over like your Maokai's and even your Sejuani's, who I'm beginning to consider dropping down to the D tier at the moment. In fact, I might just drop her down to the D tier because I don't really recommend this class of champion. I just don't think tank items are strong enough as like damage options to kind of recommend them. You're just giving up so much agency, and a lot of these picks have just been nerfed because of their competitive strength. I think Sejuani is probably the best of the 3 competitively skewed tanks, but still just a pick I wouldn't really recommend in her current state. The other 2 picks within the D tier are Nasus and Brand. Brand, they made a very like pitiful effort of trying to bring him back as a jungle option. Didn't swing hard enough. He's just weak across the board. I think if they gave him generic power, this champion could for sure see play in jungle, mid, support, bot lane once again. Right now, though, he's not that popular. He's not that good, and I just recommend other AP options over him, which are either more consistent, clear a bit quicker, or just have a bit more mobility and agency within their kit. Nasus sits within the D tier. He's a very low elo bound jungle champion. You don't see him a huge amount unless you are like below, like gold below brackets, where the like stacking fantasy and the fact that in jungle you traditionally get more stacks than top lane is a lot more like desired in those brackets. I wouldn't recommend him as a champion. He just doesn't have a good kit for jungle. He clears incredibly slowly. He is forced to kind of just wither and walk at you as his like ganking pattern. If you can consistently get to late game scenarios where you are getting the stacks, then I think there is actual spots where you can unironically pick him. I don't think he's that good though, and Nasus in his current state just isn't that great of a champion. Moving on to the C tier then, we lead off with Morgana, who did gain some power through buffs she received not too long ago. She's better as an option across the board. She's still not that popular in jungle though. She's still not that great in jungle in her current state outside of very specific counter mix scenarios. I would recommend avoiding the pick, but if you enjoy Morgana jungle, I think she's a bit better than some of the D tier options. I don't think she's completely out of the picture, but like a niche, like maybe you used to be an OTP or something, and you can whip her out every so often as like a counter pick option. I think there's room for that. Kiana, Rengar, not Nidalee anymore. I will talk about Nidalee in a moment, but especially Kiana, Rengar, very, very elite skewed jungle champions. I do not recommend them unless you have an insane amount of mastery on them. And even then, You could argue that some of the other picks have some like more forgiving kind of levers within like what they provide. Not Nasa's Rengar and Kiana are just raw damage champions. You have to snowball. You have to be able to take over games. If you can't do that consistently, I would just recommend other options over them, especially within mid elo brackets. The other picks within the C tier are Zyra and Gragas. These two champions remain here. In the case of Zyra, she's always been kind of close within the solo queue kind of like pool. Like, you can compete against other junglers. Like, I don't think she's terrible by any means, but you need to understand how the champion works. She's very unique in the way she wants to function. You need to maximize her clear efficiency. If you don't, she'll get outvalued by other jungle options, which is why I'd recommend one-tricking this champion if you do want to play it. If you don't want to one-trick it, then you're probably just better off looking for other options which are a bit more forgiving or aren't so polarizing in their playstyle, because I think Zyra is very much, you just gotta make use of that time in between your clears to kind of get value out of the pick. If you don't, then she just gets outvalued by other options. Gragas is doing a bit better with the major item buffs not too long ago. I still don't really recommend him in the jungle unless you are someone who has put a lot of time into him, but he's definitely more recommendable as an option now, and he's gone from like a D tier to like a high C tier option in its current state. Dropping down from the B tier to the C tier is 4 champions. Lead off with Darius, who Riot simply just overswung. I think the 300% to 200% made sense if they didn't then follow up nerf him as well, but they did, and I think they should have gone maybe to 250%, from like 300 to 250%, to kind of allow him to still function as a solid jungler. Like, I think Darius is a pretty, he won't get banned a huge amount or won't be that frustrating as like an A tier jungler, but right now he's just not recommendable as a pick. Like, a niche kind of pick like Darius should be recommendable, should be A tier to be recommendable. If he's not, then he just isn't that great of an option, because you are giving up a lot of things which other traditional junglers can opt into. Other picks which are being dropping down are to the B tier, from the B tier to the C tier is Shyvana. I just don't recommend the pick at the moment. She's just not been in that great of a state for a while. The champion does have like matchups where she can be better, and if you pick her specifically in like low to mid MMR brackets where you know you're not going to get punished, you know you can just freely drag and stack, then there are angles for this champion, but she doesn't translate that, she basically doesn't translate at all into high-elo. Like, she would be one of the worst options to try and climb from low to high elo with, and on top of that, her kit is just not that great for the game at the moment, so I would just recommend avoiding the champion for the most part. That being said though, this is the elo bracket which Shyvana does perform best in, and for that, she does sit above the D tier still. Like, she was close to the B tier, and I mean, she's still close to the B tier even now, because of, this is just like her best performing elo bracket. Tilia dropping down from the B to the C tier. The nerf she sustained not too long ago in 25.12. Harter and jungle as well. And jungle Tilia's had just about gotten afloat again. She suffered like nerfs towards the end of last split, and the major item buffs kind of reignited some level of like Tilia mains and like the champion a bit within the jungle, and then just follow up nerfs. Just it's really unfortunate, kind of the timeline of Tilia jungle. I would like to see them just outright buff Tilia jungle. I think they just overswung back along, and having this pick as like an option within the jungle pool is nice. I think she can be a good jungle option. Vi also drops down from the B to the C tier. They intentionally went pretty hard. It wasn't a huge nerf this patch, but they wanted to kind of swing a bit more because of the concern that Vi just becomes number 1 priority at MSI, and she still looks like one of the highest prio junglers at MSI, just not as like maybe prioritized as she would have been without that slight tap down in power. That being said though, her solo queue kind of like pick rate and power has definitely suffered a bit from it. She's not as recommendable as an option at the moment. I think Riot might long term try to do some work to kind of push her out of competitive, because she has been there for quite a while. Right now though, sits as a C2 option, just not as recommendable in her current state, but maybe you can pair alongside certain things which makes the champion feel a bit better. Nidalee, I considered leaving her at the high end of the C tier, but there is genuine like reason why I believe she can actually fit in as like a B tier jungler within like even average elo brackets at the moment. Like, the buffs to her E a while ago, where they like overall just like mega steroided the heal spell, really helped her. It helped her quite a bit for average elo brackets, and it gives her a level of a fallback pattern which she just didn't have beforehand. All to say is I think Nidalee is a good option. Like, I would recommend trying Nidalee. I mean, you have to put a lot of time into her. Like, there is a reason I did compare her to Rengar and Kiana in, like, previous tier lists. I still do. I think she does have an incredibly elite skewed kind of, like, scaling to her. But if you're willing to put the time in, she's really rewarding at the moment. And I would genuinely recommend, if you enjoy this, like, playstyle and the champion, to put the time into playing her in her current state. Graves has just been alright for a while. I was kind of hoping they would buff him slightly for MSI. It'd be quite nice to have seen some Graves there. They didn't do it, and for that, he still remains as like a mid-B tier option. I think if you're very comfortable with the champion, you can still make him work. If you're not, it's just not the time to be playing Graves at the moment. Teemo is a niche low elo pick, which can, in specific matchups, be functional. Like, I think this champion still has access to good scaling. It's clear, albeit not as good as it has been in the past. It's still fine. Like, it's still healthy. Like, he has for double blind duration on Q. The E has good monster amp to it. And overall, yeah, Teemo jungle has been... I mean, it's been riding pretty fine for a while. Like, this is the elo bracket which it does best in. And for that, yeah, it's rewarded with a B tier placement. If you want to play it, I think you can get good results on it. Karthus is a very rewarding champion if you're willing to put a lot of time into making sure your clear is as efficient as possible. If you do that and you like understand the value of the ultimate and the damage his champion output, I think he's one of the best jungle options in the game, and just you should have him within your pool. If you're not willing to put the time into learning this champion, though, you should probably just avoid him. Like, you can on a surface level get value out of his ultimate, but you need to be getting more than that in his current state. And yeah, if you're not willing to do that, then it's probably just better towards looking towards other options. Gwen's is a low beta option. She sustained nerfs in 25.12. They hurt her slightly within the jungle. I still think if you're very comfortable with a champion, you can definitely make her work here. She still scales really deep, like, well within the jungle, being able to just like power farm towards her item spikes and then play around objectives when she gets access to those spikes. Overall, the champion is definitely weaker than she has been in the past in the jungle. Like, previous Gwen was like an A, even S tier option. Right now, though, she's still a bit elite. I mean, she's still very elite skewed, and she does require some level of like mastery and depth to kind of get the value out of the champion. Rek'Sai has been doing fine for a while. Like, she should be better for like her player base. I think she's a bit under the bar at the moment, but the champion is fine in its current state. Like, if you want to play Rek'Sai, you can play Rek'Sai. I just wouldn't really recommend her unless you're an OTP. Shaco sits within the B tier, also a pretty OTP dependent champion. He's been popular for a long time at this point, and both play patterns can be viable in the right spots, both AP and AD are kind of like balanced around that. Like, if you want to opt into AP and it's a good game for AP Shaco, you can. If you want to just play the early game kind of like assassination, snowballing Shaco, then AD is still a very, very solid option to go in a lot of situations. Zac sits within the B tier. He's a tank which is kind of has just fallen down over time. I still think this pick, if you're very comfortable on him, can be decent. I just don't think he's quite like an A-tier tank option in his current state. He's also a bit more elite skewed than some of the other tank options, requiring a bit more mastery and knowledge of the champion to kind of get that additional value out of. You realize, okay, I've realized why I don't have Maokai here. It's because I have Malphite here, so I will get rid of Malphite. Bel'Veth still sits as a B-tier option. I still think this champion in elite brackets is very, very powerful. In average elo brackets, she just doesn't perform quite as well. It's kind of the same issue of Kindred, as both these champions are very, very good in elite, and if you play them like to their kind of max potential, if you just play them like carries and you don't really like make use of their invade potential and like the Kindred mini game, then I think these picks do just lose a genuine amount of value, and they kind of sit as B tier options for that. But if you want access to carry options, then yeah, your Kindred, your Bel'Veths can be really good. Just make sure you're kind of trying to push for more when you want to like learn these champions, because I think that is where they really do get rewarded as champions. Zed sits within the B tier, one of the most insane clear speeds in the entire game. This champion is incredibly rewarding if you make use of that, and then you pilot the pick well, do the combos correctly, and yeah, just make value out of the champion. I think that is where this pick really shines. He's obviously very, very popular in Smurfs queue. If you're not willing to make use of like the insane clear speed, or you just can't pilot the champion that well, that's why he kind of sits in the B tier at the moment, because I just don't really recommend him as much for like your average elo player. If you're smurfing, then you're probably within elite brackets, and then Zed definitely like rises up as a good option. Udyr sits within the B tier at the moment. The buffs he received not too long ago helped him, and he's been kind of in a decent spot since then, so he does get rewarded with a B tier placement. Hecarim, has, I mean, he's been kind of treading in the B tier for a while. He's just a bit more elite skewed and a bit more mastery locked than he has been in previous iterations. That to say though, I think if you're willing to put the time into Hecarim, I think he's in a very good state at the moment. Definitely rewarding if you have that mastery on him. Lilia, user as a counter pick, still think she could be really good. I think outside of those counter pick scenarios, she definitely suffers a bit more as a champion. Overall nerfs towards some of her itemization, combined with direct nerfs to her not too long ago, have just meant that she kind of falls as like a B tier option. But into like tank matchups and into compositions which just don't have the lockdown and don't really have the burst damage to kind of shut her down, she can be an incredibly valuable pick to opt into. Eve has been sat in a pretty good spot ever since she received a couple of buffs, and then they went and buffed a bunch of her itemization. I think she's a rewarding B-tier champion now. I don't think she is the kind of champion you want to avoid playing if you do have the mastery on her, but I wouldn't say she's like in recommendable territory at the moment. I think if you're an OTP, you're probably doing quite well. If you're not, then you need to put the mastery in, otherwise she just won't be as rewarding as some of the A-tier options in her current state. What else we got? So, Yorick, I'm actually going to drop down to the B tier now. The champion, once again, sustained another nerf. He lost I was either 3 or 4 base armor, which is meaningful against, like, your Lee Sins and your Viegos and your Kanes, your Nocturnes, which are all very, very popular. They sit on top of the jungle pool in popularity. That is meaningful. You are more likely to get invaded, and when you are weaker in your early levels, that is where you will really suffer as a champion. I don't really recommend the pick anymore. I think he's fine if you like want to opt into him, but he probably sits as more like a mid-beta option. He's definitely just suffered with some of the kind of top lane skewed nerfs that he had been receiving, primarily because of his like competitive dominance. Not even dominance, presence more than anything. Olaf sits within the A tier. I think as a counter pick, he's an incredibly good champion. He's very unpopular within the jungle, which is almost to his strengths. People won't understand the clear speed, the way to play against this champion. And I think if you really know the limits of this champion, he's one of the best picks in the game. Like, use him, especially in counter pick scenarios, but like, just generically, I think Olaf's in a very good state, just in a very good state. Words, English, hard. Amumu sits within the A tier at the moment. He's actually a low A tier champion for like the elo bracket, which is very, very recommendable for this champion. He's fine. Like, Liandry being nerfed affected him. He'd also been struck with some nerfs like back along. And overall, he's kind of under, like, maybe where he should be. I think Amumu should just be a consistent S tier option. He's easy to play. This is the elo bracket he's best in. Good lockdown, rewarding, just rewarding, easy champion to play. I think, yeah, you should have him as a high A S tier champion because he does struggle in like other areas, especially in the higher brackets of play. Lee Sin sits within the A tier. You put the time into this champion, he's incredibly good in his current state. The buffs he received to his E not too long ago really, really helped him. I would recommend picking him up if you haven't already. And I mean, I say that most people have just picked, like, Lee Sin's the most popular jungler for a reason. He's incredibly rewarding to play. And right now, yeah, you should play him. If you haven't put the mastery into him, he's not mandatory, but you should probably, like, use this time or, like, any time Lee Sin is strong to kind of, like, sharpen up on your skills on the champion. Mordekaiser sits within the A tier. I think he's fine. I think he's a good above-the-bar champion. The buffs he received not too long ago did help him. Nunu sits within the A tier. I think his unique gank pattern and the way he wants to kind of play the map, his objective securing, all very, very like potent and prevalent at the moment, and they can be really rewarding aspects of the champion, and he's been in a relatively good spot for a while. The Liandry nerf did affect him though, so that is just something to be slightly cognitive of. But yeah, I'm going to leave her in the A tier. The hotfix buff would have meant she was like number 1 jungler to recommend. The buff would have put her as like number 1. The hotfix nerf has definitely like siphoned out some of that power. I'm going to leave her in the A tier for the moment. There's a chance in 25.14 that she doesn't receive any follow-up changes, that she does jump up to the S tier. She's a champion worth watching, and if you want to play Briar, she's, I think, better to play at the moment because of the quality of life changes she received. But yeah, the champion did get hotfix nerf, so that is just something to be cognitive of. Elise has been kind of in and out of the meta, well, I say meta, the kind of like solo queue pool for a while now. She has been buffed, nerfed, she had adjustments, she had her items buffed, and I'd still say she's in a very good spot. Like, if you want to play Elise jungle in solo queue, I think she's doing quite well at the moment. I'd rate her slightly higher than Eve, and yeah, if you can like utilize her early game kind of like power, assassination potential, she is a, yeah, decent champion. Pick which I missed is Rammus. I'm going to leave Rammus within the B tier at the moment. He's The buffs didn't address his issues. He still doesn't have good combat damage, like his combat damage is low, but he is incredibly tanky. The buffs just solidified him as one of the best tanks in the game. The low econ value of this pick has also just gone up because of it. That being said, though, you're not as hard bound to full melt as you have been in the past, or for almost the entirety of Rammus's lifespan. You can opt into other things if you want, but your damage in combat's low. That is just something you have to be aware of. You are not doing a huge amount of champion damage, but your clear is, but in terms of where that's rewarded him, his clear is a lot better. He can do objectives. He's just a bit faster around the map, and being able to set up and be a bit more tankier has enabled him to kind of find his footing again. I don't recommend him at the moment if you are looking for a champion with good agency, but if you're looking for a tank, then yeah, Rammus is one of the best options in his current state. Continuing on with the A tier, Ivan got buffed on his Q not too long ago. Really helped him. He's just generically a very good champion. If you pick him in the right comps and you understand his clear, you'll usually get value out of this champion. So he just remains as an A tier option. You can even go a bit higher agency build with the PTA Malignance variants, which does perform well. It is genuinely something you can opt into and find good results on. Talon sits within the A tier. The champion the champion has been a good smurf option for a while now. I don't recommend him if you haven't put time into him, but if you understand the clear, if you understand your invade potential and you understand the combos, he is one of the best options for smurfing or just climbing below ranks quickly because of just what he provides as a champion. Damage, map mobility, clear speed. Great tools for a jungler which is looking to climb effectively and quickly. Trundle has been doing better and is very popular and competitive at the moment. He functions really nicely into the AD meta, which people have been opting into. The buffs to his pillar not too long ago helped his utility. That is obviously going to be an elite and competitively skewed buff, and he's a champion which I would recommend trying out as he's very easy to play, and if you pick him in good counterpick scenarios, you'll most of the time get good value out of this champion. You also don't need to sink a huge amount of mastery into him. Yeah, he's quite easy to play. Karzik sits within the A tier. This champion, I think, is very feast or famine in his current state. If you take over games with this pick and you're consistent with him, he's very, very good in his current state. If you're not that comfortable on assassins, he's probably still going to be a pick I recommend avoiding. But yeah, he's a decent assassin at the moment. He's not quite as smurf bound as your Talons, but more dependent on kind of just really understanding how to take over games with the champion. Matsui sits within the A tier. He's been pretty good for average elos for a while now. The buffs, I believe, and then nerfs to he's just suffered from a lot of adjustments over time. He was elite skewed for a while, but then they pulled some of that back, and since they did that, he's been a pretty solid A tier option for a while now. Kane sits within the A tier. Both blue and red have good spots. Voltaic's a very nice item on him. I would recommend giving him a try if you haven't already. That being said, though, he doesn't quite have the same level of actually, I think Kane's just generally a decent jungler at the moment. The nerfs which he received to his health growth not too long ago did affect him. It's going to make him less durable. But if you pilot the pick well, I still think he's one of the best jungler options in the game, especially for solo queue. He doesn't have great competitive viability. Too slow to come online a lot of the time. Wukong sits within the A tier. The champion has been kind of gaining popularity over time again. The AD meta has also really helped him. Just a lot of getting good value out of his passive, utilize him as a counter pick. I think he can still be a very good option. Just a good champion to have within your pool. Also a very good item scaler. Volibear sits within the A tier. The champion has been fine for a while now. The kind of buffs towards giving him a bonus AD ratio with W didn't really do a huge amount to kind of adjust his builds. People have just been moving over to Cosmic Drive instead of defaulting on Roa, which has been good for the champion. I think he's very cookie cutter in the way he wants to play. Point and click CC, good stat sticky damage, decent scaling in 1v1s still, and great dive potential. Just a lot of tools which junglers really desire at the moment. Viego sits within the A tier. He's been a pretty solid solo queue jungler for a while. He's definitely a lot more solo queue bound in his current state, opting into primarily your burst, crit variations, which is probably healthier to kind of get him out of competitive. That being said, though, he still sees competitive play. I still think he can be a very oppressive and powerful option, and he's number 2 popularity jungle for a reason. He's just got a very nice kind of kit to kind of play the jungle with. He's the modern modern Lee Sin in a way. Not really, but you get the idea. Mundo sits within the A tier. The champion, if not punished within the jungle, is one of the best scaling options within the game. Traditionally, in the jungle, you tend to see primarily Heartsteel into deadmans instead of like your Warmogs rushes, which you see within the top lane. That being said, though, like this champion has really, really good damage at the moment. He plays a lot more like a Juggernaut. I mean, he kind of is just a Juggernaut at this point. People kind of stopped classifying as a tank, which is, I mean, cracked. Like, you should have, he is a Juggernaut. Anyway, this pick, yeah, scales incredibly well. If you can get to your level 16, you can get like your 1, 2, 3 item spikes. He's one of the best options within the game. Yeah, and just great individual agency for like a higher health target for the most part. Poppy is an incredible counter pick. She's been performing really well in the jungle for a while now. She's also a great 3-way flex pick, and yeah, it's really rewarding to have this champion within your pool, especially when Lee Sin is as popular as he is. She can be a great answer to like shut him down, making sure he doesn't have good target access into your team. Diana sits within the A tier, a pick which actually probably sits at the high end of the A tier. She's been doing quite well for a while now. Her and Echo are like my recommended 1-2 AP assassins, or in Diana's case a bit more Boozer-esque if you want to like opt into like your Leandries, but she does have like that variation in her builds, which can be quite rewarding depending on what you need within the game. Nefiri sits within the A tier. This champion has kind of gradually gone down in pick rate. She obviously sustained a decent amount of nerfs, but she's still really good. She's still very, very powerful if you give her gold, if you kind of pick her in the right spots where your W has more value, or your dogs can kind of deny a lot of skill shots. Just a lot of tools which can like counteract certain compositions. I think that is the spots where Nefiri can really thrive as a champion, and paired with a lot of those mages mid, she can definitely take over games. Fiddlesticks has been moved from the B tier to the A tier. The buffs he received this patch, 5% AP ratio on his W, were really good. It helped his clear speed, helps his trading, enables him to just live longer within fights, which is a very powerful kind of tool to give Fiddlesticks, because he wants to be able to kind of sustain the full duration of his ultimate and just provide as much utility as possible. Moving on to the S tier then, these are the picks which I just recommend playing at the moment. We lead off with Jax. He's an incredible counter pick. The buffs towards his attack speed on his passive recently really helped him for jungle primarily. As you are consistently hitting camps, you're maintaining that attack speed, you can take it into duels in river, and he can really just dominate as an option. Use him as a counter pick. Blind Jax does definitely suffer into certain compositions, but he's one of the standout S tier options at the moment. Warwick, very low elo skewed, but still very, very powerful. He is probably the worst for translating into higher MMR brackets out of the 6 or 7 S tier champions I have at the moment. But you want to take him all the way to like, I don't know, Emerald, Diamond. He's great for that. I think he's a very rewarding champion. He's great individual dueling potential. He does fall off compared to other options, which is kind of like the way you play around Warwick, but most people just won't kind of respect that, and people will play into you, and you'll win your duels. You have decent gank potential with your ultimate, good objective taking. There's a lot of things really rewarding about Warwick at the moment, and yeah, he does struggle higher up because people are just going to kite you more effectively and understand kind of like the play pattern of the champion, but that is why you play him as primarily a mid to low elo option. Echo sits within the S tier, the premier AP option within the jungle at the moment. He benefited a bunch from buffs he's received recently. The Q, I believe, was ingoing. It was either ingoing or outgoing damage, where they buffed it by 10, which is really nice for him. Combined with just item buffs, has enabled this champion to really thrive as a jungler at the moment. You do need to kind of like stable your advantage and pick up like an early Dark Seal into Magi, but if you can, and you understand the limits of your champion, he is in an incredibly good spot at the moment, especially for like average elo brackets. It's where he really thrives as a champion. Jarvan, I think, probably sits as the next one. Jarvan has been kind of just there as an option for as long as kind of like the numbers are decent enough on the champion. He has incredible lockdown. He has great like gank potential. The clear is weaker, and like the objective taking isn't as good as some of the other jungle options, but if you play around your lanes correctly, you're kind of using the tools provided within your kit. He's an incredible jungler, and I really do just recommend having him as a champion within your arsenal, because maybe into like those Jinx compositions where you need some level of lockdown onto the champion, Jarvan can be a great option there for you. Xin Zhao, I think, probably comes in next. He did get nerfed recently, and that was some genuine power loss on the champion, but he is still a standout jungler. Pairs really nicely with enchanters, which some of the other junglers can definitely struggle with. He also has incredible dueling potential, is very easy to play, and just having like that ultimate are all really powerful tools on the champion. Very rewarding, very deserving of an S tier spot. I think Nocturne probably comes in next. I've still just one of the best junglers, like, and has been for like most of this split, and maybe even most of last season. People finally started going Stridebreaker in like the majority of their games. You can still go Hexplate Rush. There are people which do it and find success with it. Lethality Nocturne isn't that performant, but this champion, his ultimate is an incredibly powerful tool. His damage, like upfront, really high. He has great like objective take, well, not objective, but like great farming, and then you can utilize that to kind of like powerful objectives. Albeit you do kind of want help with that because he isn't like a premier objective taker. He is primarily a farmer till 6, and then a ganker, and using that ultimate on the side lanes where effective. That's to say though, Pantheon is #1 jungler at the moment. He's in a very good spot. He's kind of gradually been climbing up the tier list for a while now, as people have kind of caught onto the power of the pick, combined with like min-maxing the builds and getting the runes down, getting the playstyle down. It's all kind of just attributed to Pantheon being like the #1 option. He's really good in competitive as well, paired alongside Vitalia, and yeah, for jungle, for solo queue, do just recommend him as the like premier option within your pool, especially if you do play him. If you don't, then yeah, some of the other S2 options can definitely be a bit more rewarding, but that's the beauty of the game. You can kind of opt into what you need and what you feel comfortable with, and oftentimes that can outvalue some of the picks in the higher up tiers. So those are my thoughts. I do for the most part recommend the S tier. Some of the A tier can be incredibly good counter picks, and yeah, play what you feel comfortable with, play what works for you, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.